what you have to ask yourself, why do I like this aesthetic? Why do I like this, the look of this? And you have to ask yourself that question. And maybe it's, oh, I just like think that old things are cool, but it could also be I enjoy, like I mentioned before, you enjoy the things of old. You enjoy the things that we've moved away from.
Hey, my name is Matt Poole, and this is Unapologetically Catholic, the show where I talk about the reasons why I'm unapologetically Catholic and think you should be too. And this week, for the first time in a very long time, I have a guest with me. I've got Logan Koch. We've recorded a podcast before, and there was just a strange amount of technical difficulties. And I'm glad we finally got connected again. So thanks for being here, Logan.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I guess I can give like a short little bio of myself. I go to Texas A&M University. I'm studying political science currently. I have a social media account for Catholicism, so it's mainly apologetics and just a little bit. That's mostly what it is, though.
Yeah. Okay. So what's your Instagram account? Because if people want to find you, where do they go?
It's the Logan Koch. I have to spell it out because if I say how you say it, you won't be able to get it.
Yeah. I know when we first sat down that stuck with me that because you're right. Like I would have never pronounced your last name
Mhm.
Cook unless you told me.
No, yeah, and it's how you're supposed to say it and how we say it are two completely different things. In German, it's a completely different pronunciation. We just say what it means in English. That's all it is.
Oh, okay. That's probably for the best because I'm terrible with
No,
pronunciation. So see, there you go, right there. Case in point.
no, yeah, it's
But
great.
well, cool, man. So you going to Texas A&M, you have like a front row seat to like I mean, you're in college, so you see a lot of times you'll hear people say, "Oh, the younger kids are more into tradition and they're drawn to the traditional Latin Mass and the traditional ways that we've seen Catholicism." So I'm really interested to hear your perspective and what you're seeing because like you're in the thick of it. Uh, so yeah, I'd be interested to hear your opinion on it.
No, yeah. So it's not even just Catholics in general. It's a general Gen Z kind of and how about or like late millennial kind of thing, where we're kind of tired of seeing the world change, and it's changed too much to the point where we think of what's true and what's not. And so we want to go back to these traditional things. So that's why you see a lot of conversions from Gen Z and early millennials to Catholicism on these more, I would say, orthodox, not orthodox in terms of the liturgical, but orthodox in terms of the belief system and the traditions we hold. And specifically for Catholics, especially at Texas A&M, we love the Latin Mass. We don't have the Latin Mass at our school, but I know thousands of who go. We actually have an organization on campus, not associated with St. Mary's, but we have an organization on campus specifically for the Latin Mass in our diocese. And there's like specific reasons for that. Like the biggest thing is for tradition and the beauty of it. You can trace back all the way to the 1400s, the 1100s, and the 700s to see this is the same mass that the saints practiced. This is the same mass that you have like all the greats who practice. They sat in this exact same. It's a level of connection that you get just. It's a different level of connection that you get within the Latin Mass and maybe the um, ordinary form.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm 30, so I think I'm barely a millennial
Hmm.
for my age and I see that even in my age range as well. I think so I have a friend who is he studies psychology and he's a psychology professor at the local school here in town and one of the things that he sees being a psychologist that talks with people all the time is that like social media and this one of the things that he says is there was a promise of connection with people and we would be more connected than ever before because like all you got to do is pick up this little box in your hand, and then you can be quote unquote connected to whoever you
Mhm.
want wherever in the world. And in a sense that is kind of true, but he talks about that a lot of people just there's this sense of like emptiness and
Mhm.
lack of connection, and I think that that has something to do with kind of like you were saying that things are just always changing and moving, and it seems like the church is this one pillar that goes all the way back to the time of Jesus, where we can see like this hasn't changed in nearly 2,000
Mhm.
years. Um, so yeah, I definitely, I don't know. I think there's maybe something to that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think it's maybe this countercultural appeal to where a culture like kind of prizes novelty and like informality. The church kind of like prizes it the opposite. It's a timeless, it's stable, and it's never changing. Obviously, you have developmental doctrine, but that's not really in terms of what we're talking about. It's an institution, the oldest religious institution in the world. People can bring up Hinduism or Judaism, but those aren't institutions. The Catholic Church is the oldest institution. That's what makes it like so, I guess, appealing to, I would say, maybe low church Protestants or even like high church Protestants in some standards, to where they want to be a part of our tradition. They want to be a part of that thing that just is never changing, and it's been here since the time of when Jesus instituted it and telling Peter, "You are on this rock I'll be my church." That's it's of like why would we not want that? You actually see specifically in men, it's a higher men going to mass than women nowadays,
Huh.
especially in the ages 18 to 24.
Man, and it used to be the opposite, right? Like women,
Hmm.
not traditionally, but in the recent past, have gone to church way more than men have.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, it's interesting because I help out with OCIA, and there's a lot of it does seem very male dominant, or like if it's a couple, like a husband and a wife, a lot of the times that I talk to these couples, the husband will say, I started digging and I started looking and I was trying to find out what the truth was, and my wife has come alongside me. Um, so I think that's a really good it like that's what men are supposed to be doing, right? Is
Hmm.
leading their families and seeking truth and leading their families and themselves into truth, because like people who aren't married, yeah, you need to get that figured out before you go bringing, before you have a spouse and you try to lead a spouse as well. um yeah
No,
but
absolutely. I actually talked to Paul J. Kim about this at Seek. We both like kind of concurred that like we both saw a statistic when men lead in the faith, and there's a significantly higher chance that the children will follow than if only the mom does. It's like over 50%
wow.
difference. It's huge. And I mean, I've seen that personally in my own life as well, and my friends' lives, where there's just such a large difference between when the man leads in the household for faith and when the woman lead. Now, the woman leads, yes, they're still fruitful, but when both parents uh, join together and like lead their children to heaven, it's almost like it's very, very small that you'll find somebody who's unfaithful or not practicing their faith with that.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. So okay, so did you I think you told me last time that you were a cradle Catholic, is that right?
Correct. I was cradle up until I was still cradle, it doesn't matter. I was cradle, and then back when I was 14, I wasn't really practicing from like middle school years, obviously. Well, not obviously, but like from I wasn't practicing during my middle school years, I'll say that. And then when 14 came, I kind of wanted to look more the non-denominational route. And then after once I was like 15 or so, when I was getting my confirmation, I reverted mostly because of the Eucharist. I was still going to mass and stuff, but it was mostly because of the Eucharist because I wanted to. I did believe in the Eucharist. I did believe it was the body, blood, soul, and divinity. You're not going to find that in a non-denominational or Baptist church or
Yeah.
any church really outside of like ours and the Orthodox. But Orthodox, there's a little bit more of semantics in there of why I didn't go that route.
Yeah. Yeah, so I grew up Protestant, and I get kind of like you were talking about earlier that there's maybe this draw or this pull to something that's a little bit deeper. Not, and I don't want to sound like I'm knocking on Protestants, but someone who grew up Protestant, I always kind of I've talked about this before, and it was really hard for me to connect like Monday through Saturday to what I did on Sunday. Um, like I always knew that the faith mattered in my day to day life, but I don't know. There's something about Catholicism that like it really roots you into no, this is every second of every day. It just I don't know. It just feels like a deeper, more firm foundation, I
Mhm.
guess.
No, absolutely. I agree. I think we actually see this like even within the Catholic circle, where we see Catholics going into like they want more tradition. Not even just like in terms of like a hit on the ordinary mass and the extraordinary mass. It's like even the ordinary mass, they want Latin in their mass. They want ad orientem in the Novus Ordo. Um they want to see the traditions of old be presented to them in the mass, not because that like and not because inherently like these other things are like bad or like they're the Vatican II is wrong in them. It's mostly because they want to participate in what we have seen in the past. They want to participate in what the saints participated in and what their great grandparents participated in. Um, and specifically, they like, from at least from what I talked to people who love the Latin masses, they love the sacred silence that it has compared to the Novus Ordo, where it's like you're always being stimulated kind of thing. The sacred silence where the priest is just praying to himself and you're praying along with him in your missal, it's more intimate, especially when you're just like you're one on one with God in that way, if that makes sense, rather than with a whole community. Even though you're with the community, but you're still talking to him one on one while the priest is praying. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. I go to a Norvis Ordo mass, and it's
Hmm.
really, I mean, it's I would say it's a very reverent Norvis Ordo.
Hmm.
Um and there's times where there's just a lot of silence. And to me it's I don't know, like God speaks clearly and loudly in silence, I think, and
Hmm.
I think especially growing up in a world where you constantly have your phone is buzzing, you get notifications all the time. You can sit on Instagram and scroll and it's like reel after reel and little 10-second snippet videos and there's always noise and stuff going on to be able to go
Hmm.
to mass, especially where there's mass where there's a lot of like sacred silence. It's like, oh, finally, like
Yeah.
it's like a nice okay, like it gives you a second to sit down and go, oh, okay, like it's silent,
Absolutely, I agree. I go to multiple churches when I'm back at home. So the parish that I'll sometimes go to, it's not a reverent Novus Ordo, I'll say that. And then I'll go to like the church like across the lake, and it's a very reverent Novus Ordo. I love them. I love the priests. It's amazing. Um, but I think the biggest thing I actually talked to my fraternity brothers about this yesterday. We have to like embrace the silence. We have to embrace the boredom, and we're constantly being bombarded by stimulants and dopamine within scrolling that quick burst of like stimulants that we're so like I guess withdrawn from the real world, where we can't. Sometimes we're not able to have those like long term like it's delayed gratification. We like push
Yeah.
ourselves away from that. We constantly want instant gratification, which is what we get from our phones, and that's the opposite of what the mass is. The mass is delayed gratification. You go through, I mean, I love the mass. I love every part of it. That's not the point. But it takes a while to get through, especially the Latin mass, 2 hour mass, the high mass. I love it. Um some people don't like how long it is. That's completely fine. But I enjoy it for a specific reason separate to it's mainly because of how long it takes me to get the Eucharist. Gives me longer time to prepare for it. It gives me longer time to get into deeper prayer and get to a deeper state of receiving. Even though, yes, I could do it in a Novus Ordo, the Latin Mass provides me to be in God's place during the Mass for a lot longer time, which is just kind of a separate, it's not really a complete important thing, but it's whatever. It's what I receive whenever I go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that's important. And I think that's something that like a lot of people could, I mean, even myself included, because sometimes you go to mass and it sometimes you just get in a rhythm and a routine, and it's like, all right,
Mhm.
well, it's Sunday, so I gotta do what I gotta do, and then you go and you just do it because it's the thing that you're supposed to do,
Oh
and
yeah.
then it seems like for me that I'll go through a really like a dry patch of a couple of months or something like that, where it's like, all right, well, I'm going to mass because it's what I've got to do, and I love going, but then it hits me, and I'm reminded, and it always seems at like the perfect time of, okay, just take a moment, sit back, relax, and realize like what you're here to do. What is the mass? And it's like, whoa, it's the representation of Calvary, and
Hmm.
I'm participating in that. Um, so I think, like you're saying, to have that time of silence and reflection, and okay, I've really got to prepare my heart because I am receiving God, right? Like this is Jesus Christ, his sacrifice that he made that I'm participating in.
Hmm.
I need to make sure that I'm right and ready and understand the weight of what you're taking part of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I was talking to my spiritual mentor last week, and he was kind of telling me the same thing. We were kind of going on like what we need to work on. And he brought up preparing himself for his morning meditation the next morning and that it starts actually the night before. Um, which I actually really like I enjoyed because he's not wrong. We have the preparation for prayer, preparation for devotion is just as important as that prayer and that devotion. And it goes the exact same with the Eucharist. That's why I think getting to Mass earlier than 5 minutes is important. You have to allow yourself to, even if you're not on your knees praying, at least sitting there in Mass, in thought, talking to God, preparing yourself for the Mass, preparing yourself to reach to receive the summit of our faith in Jesus Christ in the Eucharist.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's not like some I don't know. It's way deeper and way bigger than some checkbox thing that you just do. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I fall victim to it as well sometimes. I'll be like, okay, there's days where I'm like I love the mass. Don't get me wrong. I'm like there's some days like I just don't want to get like ready. I don't want to get like up. I don't want to like leave. Like I want to just like sit in my bed all day. And I have to like we have to just at the end of the day, we just got to tell ourselves that it's we have to do and we have to do it like we have to romanticize everything that we do at the bottom of the day. Everything we do is for the glory of God, and that's just what we kind of have to. I have to remind myself of that specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's Texas A&M. I imagine it's probably a relatively big school, right?
70,000.
Yeah, so pretty big. Well, I don't know how big colleges are, but I would
It's
say is
I think
it
it's the
pretty
third
big?
biggest college.
Okay. So the school I went to was I only went to college for one semester, and it was in the middle of nowhere. There might have been 2,000 students there, something
Okay.
like that. Like really, really, really small. But with that many people, so like growing up in high school, I had always heard like, oh, college is a big party place. But I guess
The biggest school is Arizona State. That's a very big party place. There's over 100,000 students. Liberty has 80 to 100,000, and then
uh,
Texas A&M has, I think it's 70 to 80,000. That's including masters and undergrad, though.
okay, that's still pretty big. But
Yeah.
so with all those people, do you I don't know, do you see you kind of mentioned it earlier that you see a shift of people looking for more tradition. I guess do you see that a
Yeah.
lot there?
So we can see it, specifically, we can easily see it in the voting polls from 24, not to get political, but it's what values are.
Yeah.
We see the values shift from the 18 to 24-year-olds being predominantly on the progressive side to moving towards the more conservative side. Obviously, it's not the perfect line of where Catholicism ends, but it's still more conservative than where they were before, which is weird because we typically see that people get more conservative as they get older. But in this, we see they're 18-24, they're incredibly conservative. And after the tragedy that happened 2 weeks ago, over 125,000 campuses, both high school and college, reached out to that organization to start a program chapter there, whether it be a high
Awesome.
school or college. And granted, they're not as, like, I would say, conservative as we would like them to be in terms of Catholicism standards, but we see this just everywhere, and the Catholic Church is following along with that within its laity, especially, and it's following along in the clergy as well. There's a chart, I'll have to pull it up and show you later, but it's a chart from clergy in their what they believe is progressive and conservative. You see from the 60s to the 80s, it's predominantly all of them are progressive or very progressive. That's where they list themselves as. When you hit the 90s, it's right down the middle. From the
Nice.
2000s all the way till 2020, 2000 to 2010s, it gets even more conservative. And when you get to 2020, it's almost all conservative. There's probably like maybe 10% who are like slightly leaning progressive, but the clergy are following the line just as well. Um, we're, I guess, entering this point of Catholic, I guess, maybe not theology, but like philosophy, and that we're returning to, I would say, orthodoxy in a theological standpoint, not the religion, but orthodoxy and Catholicism and liturgy and teaching, where we're not choosing to be pastoral over being correct. We're choosing to tell people we're choosing to be correct while being pastoral, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Yep.
Um, I guess I think I hate to say this, but I love Pope Francis. I do, but I think he actually had something to do with that because he was so, I would say, polarizing on both sides. It caused people to be more conservative in a way, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So I've noticed this too because it seems almost like what's the right way to put it? That almost like people are kind of realizing because it seems like at the time of the sexual revolution and everything that
Hmm.
it was kind of, oh, it's just what makes you happy, what makes you feel good.
Hmm.
And I think that lasted for quite a long time, and I think that,
Still
I
going
mean,
on.
yeah, and I think that there is absolutely some of that, but it's almost like some people are starting to go, okay, hold on a second, my feelings and what makes me feel happy, like, that can't be it. There's got to be
Hmm.
something deeper. um and I don't know, I got to think that that's at least part of it, is people are realizing, okay, my happiness cannot be the greatest thing, whether they recognize it or not. uh
Hmm.
you
No,
know
I absolutely agree. I think that it's not, you can't, if you think your happiness is the only thing that matters, it's a selfish idea.
Right.
So we find this, I guess, fork in the road where people will try to be like, oh, it's all that matters is I'm trying to be happy, but I also don't want to be selfish. And it's kind of like, but then you have to stem, like, where does your morality come from? Where do you have this, I guess, separation of your belief? Like, how do you know this is wrong? But because they'll be atheists, but they'll be like, oh, it just matters what I think is okay. But where do you find that from? So you can't have a subjective morality and think that, oh, you want to be selfish and still be wrong, or you can't blame people for that. You have to find you has to be your morality has to be grounded in something. And what is that morality typically grounded upon? Like, I find this in with I actually this is an argument I got from Trent Horn. It was called the contingency argument. It's on God's existence, but I actually apply it to morality. So morality can't be contingent upon a contingent thing. Like, it can't be contingent on me and you existing because we don't have the possibility of creating something that's uncontingent.
Yeah.
Uncontingency has to come from something that's uncontingent itself, which is God. So people are searching for that depth. People are searching for that tradition that has been passed down from generations to generations that actually built the West. Because currently, The people who are older than mine in your generation are trying to build values of the West, conservatism, without Christ, and that doesn't work. Christ built the West, so in order to have the West values, you have to have Christ embedded in it.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's like I was talking in OCIA not long ago, and I was telling everybody it's not that God is the most good or the most kind or the most merciful, but God is those things. Like God
Hmm.
is goodness and God is justice and mercy and God is love. And so all of our standards of morality, what's right and what's wrong, what does it mean to love somebody? What does it mean to be kind to someone? All of these things, they have to be rooted in God, because
Hmm.
if they aren't, then we've seen firsthand, if you just kind of root it in some kind of arbitrary, oh well, this is what I think it means to love somebody else. It's like, well, loving somebody doesn't necessarily mean making them feel good or encouraging them or affirming them and like what they're doing, but calling them to something
Absolutely.
higher. Because it's rooted in goodness
Hmm.
itself. It's rooted in love itself. So yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I talked to my friends about this the other day about yeah, exactly what you exactly said. It's you can't say that you love somebody and then let them walk off a cliff. The same way I can't love you and not tell you what you're doing is wrong and leading you to hell. If I love you so much, I'm going to want the best for you. That's what it is, willing the best for another. Now, what is the best for another? The best is to be in full communion with Jesus Christ in his Catholic Church.
Mm.
That's the best. Why would I let you willingly walk off a cliff when I know better? Why would I
Right.
willingly let you drown in the waters that's infested with sharks? I wouldn't, because in just because I tell you, oh, that's a great thing, go do it. That's not love. Love is telling you that what you're doing is stupid and you need to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, I talked about this a couple days, maybe it was Sunday. I think it was on my Instagram page, where it's, I so growing up Protestant, I have a desire to see all my Protestant friends and family come into the Catholic Church, and it's not like not out of this just, oh, I just want to win an argument and I want to seem like I'm right and prove you wrong, but like
Mhm.
no, like you're saying, there's so many gifts. Like the sacraments are what bestow grace upon us. Grace is what is going to get us to heaven. If we're going to be there, it's going
Mhm.
to be because of the grace of God. So like, why in the world would I not want you, who's not a Catholic, to be a part of this? Like if I, like you're saying, if I truly love you as another human being, right? If I value you as another human being, then I'm going to want this for you too, because I know that is what's good. That is the loving thing to do. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it better. I don't think that you can say you love someone and then simultaneously let them go astray. I think that's kind of counterintuitive and it doesn't align with your own values. I don't think anyone could say that either. And people will say, oh, it just makes them happy, but happiness is, for one, subjective. Two, how would you scale that? There's no way to scale it. It's like in the most like least grotesque way, somebody could be happy with on AS, but they're not gonna. It doesn't mean that they should be doing it. So we would both
mhm.
say it's morally wrong. Um, Same thing. Somebody could be happy killing somebody. A psychopath could be happy going to kill somebody. Doesn't mean that it should be done.
Yeah,
So the happiness argument is just so, I think, obscure because it's not rooted in anything other than feelings, which is in itself a fallacy.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I was wanting to ask too, I guess what makes, I'm trying to think of the right way to word it. What makes like people your age and maybe at my age too, in your opinion, be drawn more to the traditional Latin Mass um than maybe the Novus Ordo? Because there seems to be like some argument and some back and forth about, oh, the Novus Ordo is good, the TLM is better, all of this stuff. But I mean, I even in my Norvis Ordo uh, mess, there's a lot of the younger people do seem to want, like you were saying earlier, they want like, why can't we use Latin or why can't we have more sacred silence? Um, so I don't know what I'd be here. I'd be interested to hear your opinion and your take on that.
Yeah, I think it's also I think this is once again the drawback to specifically I think you could have a reverence Novus Ordo, but I think the reverence in the Latin Mass I think the least reverent Latin Mass is still more reverent in terms of how it's practiced than the Novus Ordo. Because the Novus Ordo, there's not as many safeguards as the Latin Mass. Latin Mass is pretty like straight and cut. I mean, if it's this way you do it, there's no other way. There's no other like leniency. You can do it like this. You can do it like that. Um, but a lot from whatever I heard is you see it like, and it's probably a lot because of that Norvis Ordo isn't practiced as it should be. Like Pope Leo said, like I think last week, he said a big thing, the big problem with the Novus Ordo right now is that it's not being practiced reverently. It's not being practiced correctly. It's being practiced irreverently. For an example, like you'll have you don't see in the Latin Mass people when doing the Our Father having the orange posture or holding hands. You don't see or like during or the sign of peace. A lot of people and even just traditional Novus Ordo parishes are against that because it takes their argument is that it takes the attention away from God when we should be going from peace be with you straight into the Lamb of God, straight into and continuing the Eucharistic liturgy. As well as a lot of the biggest things that I've heard is the ad orientem argument. You can have Novus Ordo and ad orientem. I know that, but specifically in the Latin Mass, and that's where it is typically. Nobody really does Novus Ordo and ad orientem. While you can, they don't do it. The Latin Mass and ad orientem. The biggest thing about that is the priest seems to be, in the arguments I've heard, seems to be the center of the Novus Ordo. It seems to be like even like when he's doing his prayers, the attention's on him. While in the opposite, when you're doing the Latin Mass, the attention is on Christ because he is on the center. And whenever he's lifting it up, you only see his back, but you see Christ right there. While in when the former, you see his face and you see Jesus. While it may be a slight difference, it is a major one in terms of, for one, aesthetics, for two, just a psychological understanding of this is the first time you're seeing the elevation of Christ. Like you don't see it any other time at TLM other than when he elevates it. Um, and I guess yeah, it's like it's again like the uniformity of it. There's one cut and dry way to do it, as well as you can go anywhere in the world to a Latin Mass and you will go to the exact same Mass. When in the vernacular, you can go to France and you won't understand a word they're saying.
Yeah.
Um, I guess in another way, like is mystery. Like there's a mystery to the Latin Mass that is, as I mentioned before, highlighted by the silence. There's a silence that each person is having their own experience in the Mass, different from the person next to them. Not because of anything that's wrong with either, or it's just that person is just having a completely different experience than another. As well as, especially in a more contemporary, I'm giving a lot of reasons, I'm sorry, but
No, no, that's fine.
um, I went to a Mass this past weekend. It was a very contemporary music, and I know music isn't like really the super important part, but it still draws a sense of reverence at the end of the day. Like I don't find Protestant worship music to be as reverent as a Gregorian chant. You can even have contemporary Gregorian chants where they're more it's not modern time, but I think they just made it. Um that's still more reverent than a Christian worship song. There is a separation between the two. There's a reason why they actually made the Gregorian chants, why they made the hymns how they made them. You can see within their music, it's always a going up. It's kind of hard to explain it, but it lifts your soul up. It doesn't, and this isn't to say where other worship songs don't, but it doesn't do it the same way Gregorian chants do. Um, and I think the biggest thing about it is the receiving on the tongue and the altar rails.
Yeah.
Um, I've seen a lot of churches install the altar rails. I've seen a lot of dioceses where their bishop doesn't want them, take them out. The youth, the youth love them. The youth love. You see more youth receiving from the mouth than you see any other generation, and it's
Yeah.
just it's purely a fact. It's like the amount of youth that I see veiling, the amount of youth that I see dressing properly to mass, the amount of youth that I see receiving on the tongue rather than the hand. They want the tradition. They want to participate in the mass and the practices that their great grandfathers participated in. I got this missal from my great grandmother actually. She would have been like 106 today, or not today, this year.
Oh,
So this is a Roman missal from the 1930s.
wow.
This is a whole year of Latin, and it's in one single year. You only need one book. But the biggest thing is that we want to participate in the mass that our great grandparents participated. We want to participate in the mass that Pope Pius, that Saint Pius X, that all these saints participated in that we don't get to. And it's nothing against the Second Vatican Council. It's just more of what we want. And I think it's a big thing about it's a big thing that we need to do within the youth. There Synodality gets a really bad rep, but the traditionalists don't use it. They don't go out and voice their opinion that they want more Latin, that they want a permission of traditional Latin masses. If you're not there, they don't get to hear what we say. They don't get to
Yeah.
hear what the laity wants, which is tradition essentially.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's good too because I know like just listening to you talk a lot of times you're saying and there's nothing against the Norvis Ordo or there's nothing against Vatican II because it seems like sometimes there can be this idea that you either have to love the traditional Latin Mass, which means that you hate the Norvis Ordo and you hate Vatican II and you think it's bad and it's wrong and all of this stuff. But I mean, I could be wrong, right? But I think that most people who enjoy the traditional Latin Mass and prefer it and would rather go there, or would say like what you're saying that is, I wouldn't buck
Absolutely.
against the church, right? And I wouldn't say, oh, the church has said this, but I know better. I know better than the church does. The Norvis Ordo is bad, or Vatican II was evil. But it's just like
Absolutely.
it's like a it's like I don't know. I just prefer this because of the I see more reverence, and it's almost like everybody, well, like we've said before, that everyone is getting so tired of the noise and the modernism and the let's try this new latest greatest stuff that it's like just give me one thing that's not
Hmm.
new, like you're saying, that something that my great great grandparents did that has been celebrated for hundreds and hundreds of years. Like that's what I want to be a part of because that obviously there's something there for it to have lasted this long. um
Hmm.
that
Absolutely. And I think I was talking to my Dominican friend the other day, like Dominican in terms of his order. Um I was
yeah.
talking to him the other day and he was yeah, I mean, it's not about that the Novus Ordo is inherently wrong, it's just practiced incorrectly. And Vatican II was just very too vague. There was a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of vagueness within the document that just allowed for anything, which is it's not anything. It's not the Vatican II wasn't wrong. It was just very vague. So it allowed the bishop. It's just whatever the bishop says. So it allowed the bishop to do whatever he wanted with the diocese, and in turn, eventually that turned into not having the Latin Mass, and eventually it turned into Pope Francis cutting off like the Latin Mass suppression. And it's like, yeah, I would agree that most people who go to Latin Mass don't have a problem with the Novus Ordo. It's just not they don't they prefer the Latin Mass. They prefer to go to that Mass that was practiced by the saints and our great grandparents. Obviously, there's small sects that are like, oh no, we they hate the Novus Ordo, but there's also small sects in the Novus Ordo who say people who go to TLM are awful. It's on both sides, and it just happens to be that the TL that people, I guess, chastise the people who have the TLM more because it's typically it's I mean it is technically against Vatican II, but it's also against Vatican II to say that TLM going to TLM is inherently wrong.
Hmm. Yeah. And something else that you had mentioned a couple of times is the ad orientem
Hmm.
versus the pre what is it when the priests face the people versus populum? Is that
I
how you
think
say
that's what it is. Yeah.
it? So I remember I had just come into the church, I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year, somewhere around there. And the we had the priest at my parish over for dinner, and there was a seminarian there who came along with him, and we were sitting down and talking, and we were kind of talking about these things, and because being somebody who didn't grow up Catholic, like I had no clue about Norvis Ordo versus the traditional Latin Mass. I had
Hmm.
been once before to the traditional Latin Mass, I think. Actually, funny enough, it was when I was Protestant, and it was a midnight mass, and I was like, "Holy cow!" I was like lost like a duck in the desert. It was beautiful, but I had no clue what was happening. And so the seminarian, when he came over, we were talking about these different aspects and the differences and everything, and he wasn't trying to push me one way or the other, but he just asked me. He said, "Okay, so when the priest lifts up the Eucharist after it's been consecrated, why does he do that?" And I thought about it for a second, and because the Norvis Ordo Mass I go to, they do versus populum, and um, I was like, I don't know, I guess maybe to lift up Jesus to show the people. And he was like, he's grinned and he nodded and he said, so this is one of the reasons why I am a very big proponent of ad orientem, even in the Norvis Ordo, is because that when the priest lifts up the Eucharist, it's not to show the people, um, but to lift Christ up as like offering to God. Um, and I was like, wow, I don't know. I had never really thought about that before, but I thought uh, it was just interesting to see that someone like me who had no clue one way or the other what was actually happening there. That like I don't know. He said that, and I was like, I think that makes the case for it.
Yeah, and I mean, ad orientem essentially means to face the east. A lot of the churches nowadays aren't built toward the east, but if you look at really old churches, they're all facing towards Jerusalem. Or if you're, I guess, you're on the yeah, they're all facing towards Jerusalem. But this doesn't just come from like the medieval times. Like there's it and it would. And I just looked it up for example because I knew this because I was talked about this with my Dominican friend. Jews prayed toward the temple in Jerusalem because that's where God's place dwelt. In 1 Kings 8:29-30, Daniel 6:10, they all prayed that's where the sacrifice was ad orientem. And we see this also in the early church in the second and fourth centuries, where the early Christians associated the East with Christ, who is called the Son of Righteousness in Malachi 4:2. Um, the early church was designed to pray towards, yeah, it's exactly how you said. It's to centralize Christ in the Mass. It's not to it has nothing to do with the priest, but it's to specifically point out like, oh, this is an important part of the Mass. This is and whenever, like I said earlier, like they couldn't see him. Like I'm a big proponent of also ad orientem and Novus Ordo because it has roots in Judaism. It has roots in the early church, even in St. John Chrysostom mass, which that's a little different because they have it completely blocked off. You don't see anything. Um, but within the early church, like yeah, they had these masses that were completely different than from what we see now, and even it's different in the Latin mass. But in the second and fourth century, ad orientem, they face the same direction. And it's toward God. It's not toward each other. So it's yes, it's a little bit of is aesthetics, but a lot of it is like the mentality of it, kind of how your friend mentioned, where everyone's facing one way. There's one sacrifice to God, and you can see that we're all sacrificing God together when the priest holds it up in his hands.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting too, because one of the things that really drew me to Catholicism was the idea of like when I had first, I think it was the first time I went to mass was like November or something, and maybe end of October, maybe early November, somewhere around there in 2021. And I was listening through the Bible in the Year podcast
Mhm.
from Father Mike Schmitz, and it was the year that he did it. So I wasn't quite at the end, but I had listened to a good chunk of it. And I remember going to mass and I thought, wow, like everything that the priest is doing, from the way that they all come in to, the different prayers that they're doing, the way he dresses, and why he does things in a very specific way. Everything had some kind of reason and connection to it.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know. That I think people can see that, and I think especially younger people are. Maybe there's this sense of, okay, there's a deeper meaning to everything that's going on here, and that's what I'm looking for, because everything just seems so surface level and shallow in the day to day. So when we have these more reverent masses, it's like, okay, so this is much deeper. There's something much deeper in even the way that the priest walks in, and the reason he comes in the way he comes in. Like the incense, the incense has a deeper meaning to it other than
Mhm.
just like we like
To
to
smell
smell
good.
or yeah, right. And which is great. I mean, I love the smell of incense, and I think that's an added benefit. Kind of like you're saying, the aesthetic of it is a great and added benefit, but I don't think that anybody would. Well, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear your opinion. Do you think more people are drawn to it just because it's like an aesthetically cool thing or like a vibes thing, or is it? I
I
don't know.
think
Do
there's
you
a
think?
handful of people who are.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the majority. I think there is a handful of people who are drawn to the aesthetic, and you can. I want to say aesthetics go deeper than because the aesthetics are who you. I would say like what you desire in something, whether it can be subconscious. What you have to ask yourself: why do I like this aesthetic? Why do I like this? The look of this, and you have to ask yourself that question. And maybe it's, oh, I just like think that old things are cool, but it could also be I enjoy, like I mentioned before, you enjoy the things of old. You enjoy the things that we've moved away from, especially in like the suburban and urban life. Things are always going quick and fast. When you have that slow, methodical, you have that deep prayer in silence, you're gonna like that aesthetic a lot more because it, for one, slows you down and it brings you in a more intimate prayer than if you had it without. I would also make the point, like, yes, we can have Novus Ordo in Latin, but specifically in the traditional Latin Mass, um, Latin is a the reason why we love Latin in the Mass is because it's not a vernacular. No, it's a dead language, which means this is actually an argument that, for one, people make against making Latin a vernacular and a spoken language again. It's also one of this. There's another reason. So actually, Jewish people, before they moved back to Israel in the 1900s, the modern Hebrew is not Semitic, it's more Germanic and Yiddish. But the argument against with Orthodox Jewish people when they were trying to get away from not using Hebrew in the vernacular is because it was used as only a sacred prayer. Same thing as Arab is for a lot of Muslims. And the same thing for Latin as for Catholics. It's holy because it's only used for holy things, while the vernacular it's corrupted. I mean, even if you use it for holy things, there's still every day in your everyday life there is words that are being absolutely used in disgusting ways. While you come to Latin, you have no connection to that at all. It's only a holy and only used for sacred things.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? So it's interesting because I like at my parish, and I've seen this at other parishes before too. Like you were talking about earlier, there's there's the English masses, and then they'll have the Spanish masses. And I know that one of the things, at least in my parish, is they'll talk about, well, we want to try to blend these two different communities together, because it does seem like you have your English speaking community and then you have your Spanish speaking community, and the two are very divided and they're very separated. Not like because there's some kind of combativeness or something like that, but we don't go to mass together, so we're not around each other like we are with people who speak the same language. So for me, and I think this, maybe this could be a more frivolous thing, but I think, yeah, well, I think there's a way to solve that, and if we did the, we celebrated the mass in a universal way with a universal language, then it wouldn't be like, oh, well, I speak English, so I go to the English mass, or I speak Spanish, so I go to the Spanish mass. It's like, no, you go to mass, not, and you like, I don't know. I know sometimes people will say, well, yeah, but I don't speak Latin, so I wouldn't understand it. And I get that and I understand, but
The homilies are used in vernacular. The readings
yeah,
are typically in the vernacular, and they can read it twice if they want. The mass is already 2 hours long. An extra 10, 15, another 10, 20 minutes isn't going to hurt you.
right. Yeah. And so, and like, the other thing too is the prayers at mass. I mean, there might be some parts that change depending on the liturgical time of the season, right? So,
Hmm.
or there might be certain things that are excluded depending on the liturgical season that you're in. But for the most part, it's like, if you go enough times, like after a year, I would think at most you probably will get to a point where it's like, okay, I know what's being said because I've been showing up every Sunday. Or if you go to daily
Absolutely.
mass, even better. Like you'll catch on. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
uh, I don't know. It could be maybe a little more of a frivolous, non-meaningful thing, but I do think there is something to that. Like it's a way to bring different communities together. Just use one language. Use the universal
Exactly.
language and the universal
Exactly.
church.
And that's what the church is trying to push so much, and that's why they're trying to push the Novus Ordo, but they don't understand, especially in like areas of like America specifically,
Mhm.
there's such a language barrier sometimes where you have people who, even if they live in America, they only speak Spanish. Some have a second language of they go only to the German mass, they only go to the Irish mass. So a way to blend these communities is having a universal language within the mass that everybody can go to. I think it's also important that we train, especially the priests that go to the bilingual masses, to speak those double languages. Priests used to be able to speak like three, four different languages. It was only like a relatively, like I think in the last 100, 200 years that they kind of like drew back on that, where they only really had to speak like one or two.
Wow. Huh. That's interesting. The when I first came into the church, the priest
Who's your
that was
pope?
at, huh?
Who was the pope whenever you came into the church? Francis or Benedict?
Pope Francis, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Benedict knew apparently like seven, eight languages.
Yeah, so the priest of the parish that I went to, it's this is a side tangent, but it's a funny story. We were at I walked into a restaurant. I can't even remember what it was. It was like some chain restaurant, right? But um, there were people from India there, and I don't know what the dialect was, but I heard the priest like speaking their language to them, and the lady taking his order was shocked because he didn't know I was there. I just happened to like walk in behind him, and he turned around and he's like, "Oh, Matt, hey," I was like, "Hey," I was like, how many languages do you know? And he goes, oh, I'm fluent in seven, and I know, like, I kind of know two others. And I was thinking, holy cat, like, I do good to speak English alone. So I was very impressed.
No,
Uh,
yeah, that's hard. Well, once you learn one of the Romance languages, you can it makes it easier to learn the others. It's just that first step of learning a Romance language. Like
hmm.
I am trying to learn Spanish right now. I'm not good at all. So,
Yeah. But well, so okay, so I'm interested to hear. This is purely speculation, but you mentioned it a little bit earlier about how Pope Leo was saying that like the Norvis Ordo isn't celebrated that the way that it should be, and I have seen firsthand like abuses in Norvis Ordo masses. So
yeah.
what do you Are you hopeful for the future? What do you think
I
is to
I'm
come?
definitely hopeful. I think having Augustinian there is really good. I do like Pope Leo. He's not as conservative as I would like to be. Obviously, he still has to be pastoral and still has to try to remain church unity. But I am hopeful for the future, especially seeing the numbers of clergy in terms of orthodoxy and seeing how the laity is going in a more conservative way. Um, it's just going to take time. Um, that's really all. I think it's going to take time. I think with if we continue the way we're going, we're just going to keep getting more and more conservative, more and more orthodox in our teaching and liturgical practices. Um, I have seen liturgical abuses firsthand. Unfortunately, like there just has to be more guardrails. Like we cannot just like let priests do whatever they want. I know I'm not like a spiritual director. I'm not going to be the one who's like, "Oh, this priest is awful." No. Well, but there's just obvious few practices. It's like on Sundays when we have it's this whole every Sunday is a solemnity. There should be more than two candles on the altar or next to the altar. That's more of a minor thing, but it's still pretty important in terms of portraying the mass as important. It's like I explained that I talked to a Dominican about this. There are levels of holiness. So like your daily masses, yes, it's completely okay to have those two candles. When you get to your Sundays, those are always solemnities. So you go up either four or six. Now you have your high solemnities, such as like Easter, Christmas, or the Assumption, the Annunciations, things like that. You'll have pretty much as many as you possibly can. At least that's what I've always been taught. And there's even more. You'll have I've seen priests when they do the elevation of the Eucharist only use one hand. I or whenever they don't correct them when people hold hands in mass or do Orans posture. It can seem like, oh, you're like being nitpicky, but it's not. Or like when people clap in mass or when people talk out loud in mass or even like in the narthex when mass is going on or after mass or before mass, people don't understand there's a time and a place, and priests are trying to be more pastoral and trying not to push people away by correcting them rather than actually telling them what they're doing is wrong and trying to correct them because priests know better. They're trained in in liturgy. They are given schooling. They know better. They just choose not to correct them out of fear of losing souls, which is if the person can't take criticism for what they're doing, I it's typically a telltale sign they're not that practicing anyways. I
Right.
think me and you would if somebody told us we were doing something wrong liturgically and they were correct, me and you would take it to heart and we would just stop doing that. Somebody who's not practicing isn't going to feel the same way. They're going to take that to offense, and if that pushes them away from their soul, were they ever actually practicing in the first place is kind of a question I would have.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a handful of things that like the talking and before and after mass. Thankfully, it
Mhm.
doesn't happen too bad where I go, but sometimes it does, and it's like, man, just uh, I don't know why this story sticks out in my head, but there was one time where I was listening to I think it was Joe Rogan was telling a story about it was what kind of he did some kind of fighting or something like that. Brazilian jiu-jitsu or something like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
probably.
anyways, he did some kind of fighting and he was talking about how like in the ring that like in that fighting arena, once you get in the ring, like almost like that's a sacred place, right? Like the only thing you do in there is you fight. And I think he was saying he had like a girlfriend or something at the time was like, oh, why don't we go up on the like I'll just say spend some time together, you know what I mean, on the
Yeah.
in the ring, and he was like, absolutely not. Like, have you lost your mind? Do you know what that is for? Like, it's not for that. And I think that I mean, it's this is a funny analogy, but I think about that when it comes to mass. Like,
No, I think it's applicable.
yeah, like I'm not. I
Time and
don't.
place.
Yeah, like I want to hear about you and your family and how your weekend was and how your kids are doing and all that stuff, but like let's just go outside, right? Or that's I think that's why a lot of parishes will do like a coffee and donuts or something like that after mass because it just like a lot of people after mass will want to kneel back down after mass is over and pray. And it's like, man, I don't take away from that time. Like, don't take away from those people who are wanting to pray, because you want to talk about the football game last night. Like, I want to talk about the football game last night, but
Hmm.
let's go do it outside, right? So
Absolutely.
uh,
No, yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think I had an argument with my friend about this the other day. It was about how we dress in mass. Um, I had the argument with him because he was like, "Well, the Bible specifically teaches against like the importance of like what you wear." But and this is like more of a traditional view, I would say, is a and more I guess even people who are like the youth would agree with this typically, is that how we dress in mass is just as important how we address God. Like we're us how we dress signals importance of things. If you're dressing, my argument was if you're dressing better for your work or for your hobbies or for um, it's just worldly things, then going to see Christ in the Eucharist, it's disordered. Like there's an order of importance, and if God's not the most important, if God isn't something that where you can, oh, this is an event every week that I go to, then why are you going? If that kind of makes sense. Like God should be the most important person in your life, so that way you should treat him in every single aspect of your life like that.
yeah, yeah. I've had people so in OCIA, people have asked like, oh, well, what am I supposed to wear to mass? And I would say like I'm not one that's going to tell people you have to like men wear a suit and tie and women
Yeah,
you have to wear an ankle
it's the
length
best
dress.
that you have.
Right. Yeah. Like just go home, look in your closet and look at like what do I have that I put this on and I'm like this is something that I wear that's very nice, that's very presentable. Whatever that is, whatever the nicest thing you've got is. And if you can buy something nicer, then sure, absolutely, by all means go do it. But I understand some people are like, "Man, I can't go buy a nice
Hmm.
suit." Totally
Absolutely.
fine, you know? Uh
But I guess
but
my whole argument wasn't against. I explained this. I was like, my whole argument isn't that like suits and tie matters. It's not about that. It's about giving your best to God.
right.
And in the ceremonial laws, they taught you give your first fruits to God. Abraham gave his first son Isaac to God. Even God Himself gave His first son to us. So we should reciprocate that exact same idea and give all that we can, the best that we have, even if it's just if even if it is just a nice t-shirt that you own, that's all you can do. That's all you can do. But I mean, it's I see people where they go to like prom with a suit and tie, and then I see them in mass with short khakis, with
Yeah.
a t-shirt with a Texans t-shirt on and some sandals. What are we doing? Like
Yeah.
I understand Jesus says come as you are, but that's come as you are means to give your best still. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean to give like, your half-ass self. It's not what it's talking about.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think just like with the mass, like every detail matters and has some kind of meaning. And like you're saying, like even in the way you dress, like we can have some kind of participation in that too. That like the way that we dress, the way that we conduct ourselves in the mass, and like all of these things can have some kind of deeper meaning of oh this it should be like a like from the love in your heart should these things should pour out, right? Or from like understanding, oh, okay, so I'm here to participate in the sacrifice of the mass. I understand this is a big deal. I know and I recognize what's happening here. So therefore, like these things just follow, right?
Mhm.
Uh yeah, yeah. I think that's
No, I
good.
absolutely agree. I think it's kind of I don't know, it's silly to me that like and I find it disordered. I mean, it's just about I think it's silly. I think it's like you're prioritizing your comfort or your I'm not here to like condemn anybody, but it's a comfort thing. It's I think oftentimes it's a laziness thing. It does take a lot of work to get ready, to look nice, and some people just don't want to put that kind of effort in.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um,
Yeah.
well, the other thing the last thing I was wanting to ask you about was w- I guess in your opinion, what do you see the trends being? Do you see this like conservative kind of more traditional push still going? Do you see it being just like a wave that you think is going to crash out at some point? What's your speculation?
No, actually, I think even with all the pushback, if anything, the pushback's going to continue to push forward the people who want to go to Latin Mass. Um, I find it one very, very weird and very odd that when bishops try to constrict the Mass, granted, yes, it's all in their power. They have the power to do that. Is what they're doing correct, though, in terms of is this like ethically okay? I would say no, specifically in Charlotte or in my own diocese, Austin, where we were going to have a mass at Rudder Tower, which is our big auditorium. We were going to have a mass there, a Latin mass there, but it got shut down on his first day of job. Is that ethically okay? I would say no. Is it within his job and is it within his power under the councils? Absolutely. I think he has complete the power to do that. I don't think it's okay though. Specifically when the youth, you see a surge of youth coming back for tradition specifically, and you're stripping the thing that is traditional. And this isn't to say Novus Ordo isn't traditional. Yes, I would say Novus Ordo is more traditional than every other denomination's um, service, mainly because that's just what it is. It's the Catholic Church is the most traditional institution, but we want traditionalism within traditionalism. We want what you can trace back the roots of all the way to 700 AD. Um, and I don't see it crashing and burning. I think it's just going to keep gaining more and more momentum. I see more and more women veiling. I see more and more men going to being more traditional, not only in their liturgical beliefs, not only in their their own like values, but in how they present themselves. More people are being drawn to Christ. More people are being drawn to the, I think, conservative side. Even it's not just an American thing. You see this in France. It's per capita, more people go to Latin Mass in France than people go to Novus Ordo, in terms of like attendance. Um, it's just it's the same thing. So in the UK, majority of people go to majority of practicing Christians are actually Catholic, not Anglican anymore. And I know a lot of people who are in England actually go to a Latin Mass over Novus Ordo. I don't think I know anybody who goes to a Novus Ordo, honestly.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. I see those same kind of trends too. Even in my I'm barely a millennial, but in the millennial generation
You're the
as
same
well.
age as my brother.
Nice. Okay, cool. So I'm not too old.
No, not
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, not yet. That's right. But I see it too. I see more and more people wanting this desire for, hey, how did we do things 1,000 years ago? There must be something to that because it's lasted so long. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's a good sign. I don't know. I'm very hopeful. It sounds like you are
Absolutely.
too.
Yeah, no, I'm very hopeful. See a lot more, I would say, youth with like not just like statues of religious figures, but we have like icons, which that's more of an Orthodox thing typically or an Eastern Catholic thing, but even like Roman Catholics have a lot of icons.
Yeah.
It's traditionalism. It's just it's what it is. I mean, I don't I'd much rather go to like a more reverent mass than to go to I'd rather go to a much reverent mass to smaller parish than go to a very large and beautiful parish that is, I would say, more contemporary. That's a personal opinion. Not everyone's gonna hold that personal opinion, but it's whatever it's what I believe. It's
Yeah.
whatever I value at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, awesome, man. Well, thank you very much for being on. I really appreciate it. And this time it worked out. We didn't have any issues.
Absolutely, yeah. I was so surprised we didn't have any technical issues this time. It was rough last time. I will say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, man.
Absolutely. You have a great day.
All right, you too.